Yep. Here we go. Oh.
Welcome in, folks. Sorry, my head's not in this. We're getting ready to watch Integrated Flight Test 9, which takes off in about 28 minutes. Sorry, I am fighting a serious migraine right now. So as soon as I get this off in the air and finish it up, the quicker I can go lay down. I feel like caca. But I'm not going to miss this. I'm going to watch it. And since I'm going to watch it, I might as well stream it. Let's see here. We'll go ahead and SpaceX's already started theirs.
Starship on top, put the booster on top, catch the booster.
Like I said, we still have about 30 minutes.
We did put the orbital launch mount on there. That's responsible for routing all of the propellant to the booster ahead of flight.
Hey, Phoenix. Hey, Joe, Manette. Can y'all hear me okay?
All of those forces. The single piece we just lifted in
my
is about 1,060.
My mic boom. All right, good deal. My mic boom has gone limp.
That's the same way.
It won't hold my mic up anymore. So right now it's propped up on top of one of my monitors. A little further away than I normally like it, but as long as y'all can hear me. Hey, Kim. I'm hanging in there. I'm still fighting my health. Last couple days, it's been a little bit of everything. My sinuses, my back, and my lungs. I'm actually breathing a whole lot better. I'm still not getting the oxygen levels I need, but I think they make pills for that. If I could put a little blue pill on my mic thing, then I'd do it.
As you can see behind me, the crowd is gathering outside of our mission control room here in Hawthorne, and the excitement is really palpable.
I'll buy one eventually. I haven't been streaming enough to really need one right now.
Here in Hawthorne usually serves as the mission
Hopefully that changes here in the next month or so.
Once they launch from Florida and California. Now with Starship, all countdown and mission control operations
kind of hard to stream when you're when you can barely get out of bed.
See on your screen now. But as we develop a vehicle like Starship, we want as many experts watching over its various systems as we can. And that's what we use the mission control room here in Hawthorne for during Starship flight tests like today's. The folks in mission control
Elon is also supposed to be making a speech to the
this includes things like
the SpaceX folks. I don't know if they're going to televise that or not. They might release it later on. Originally, it was supposed to be before the launch, and he postponed it till after the launch today.
Immediate access to our engineers' knowledge, which is really, really important when we're making informed decisions.
They've had two quote-unquote failures the last two launches in a row, and people are getting a little discouraged, so he's going to kind of give them a pep talk. But even on the failures, they're learning things. They're learning a lot. With every failure, you learn things, and you learn what not to do, which is what these flight tests are all about anyway. Nothing to get discouraged about. Today, today the booster they're using is booster 14. They're calling it 14-2 because this is the second time it's going to fly. This is one of the ones they caught back in January, I believe.
Yeah, can't wait to
with
see
IFT
Chris. As you can see,
6
floating on the vehicle is just a little under 2 miles away from us, and we're really
or 5. I can't remember now.
Real quick. So
It's a booster that's already been flown.
super heavy booster.
I think the only thing they did to it, they did to change out one engine.
The full and rapid reusability. Unfortunately,
But other than that, it's the same old thing.
Call a rapid unscheduled disassembly before it
They
finishes
have they have already started loading
those additional
propellant
mission
into the
objectives.
booster.
About 5.5 minutes into
And probably the ship, too.
hardware failure in one of
Ooh.
the sea-level Raptor engines took out
Sorry, I'm not
the
used to talking
two
this much.
remaining sea-level engines and a Raptor vacuum engine. That's 4 of the 6 engines that ship has. This was a different failure than we saw on Flight 7, and the fixes that we put in place did work as expected, so this was a new issue on Flight 8. And welcome to iterative engineering.
That's right. Losing hardware is a potential outcome of any test program. That's why we're always prepared with safety measures in place and also ready to have boots on the ground.
What was that?
If anything like debris.
Oh, Free just resub. Thank you,
All the
Free.
necessary parties, organizations, administrations for safety in advance and in an ongoing basis during our testing.
I don't have my chat bot going,
Possible outcomes.
only because I don't want it up on the VOD.
The people of the Bahamas, the government of the Bahamas, who worked with us so closely since Flight 8.
We took full responsibility for the cleanup.
I'm hanging in there,
So
Free.
had people on the ground in the Bahamas
I'm doing much better than I was doing earlier this year,
So all that said, we're
but
moving
I'm
forward
still
in our development
far
cycle
from
with
perfect,
safety
and I'm never going to
compliance.
get back to where I
We
was.
fly again today to get this current iteration of ship to space and back.
That's right. Putting hardware
My lungs will never be what they used to
as
be.
possible, so you're seeing how things behave all
But
together in the real world.
just gonna have to kinda learn to deal with it.
As they pop up. That's how SpaceX developed the very first
If I
rocket
quit
back
these,
in
it'd be a whole lot
the
better.
same philosophy was used to
Although I have cut way back. Although I probably won't even finish this. My ashtray's full of half-smoked cigarettes.
While intentionally stressing the super heavy vehicle during its return to get data on its boundaries. And by stressing, we mean that we'll be pushing the flight envelope of super heavy as we fly it.
And on this version of Starship, this is another version 2 Starship. They fixed the problems from the last 2 flights, supposedly. They aren't going to try to catch this one. They're going to try to land it in the ocean. They've replaced a bunch of the tiles. Actually, there's some tiles missing, and they've replaced some tiles with other types of tiles. They're doing a lot of tile testing on this one. They do have 8 dummy Starlink satellites loaded. They're going to try to launch those today too.
Super Heavy pushing itself and Starship into ascent over the Gulf.
Big day full of tests. They've got all kinds of tests going on. That's one reason why they're not going to try to catch either one of them.
Booster will do its boost back
no sense trying to catch an already reused booster. But even with the booster, they're coming in at a sharper attack angle.
Ship will remain suborbital. We will be
this time. They're trying something different. They're also going to purposely not fire one of the engines or the center ring in the booster when it lands, and fire up one of the others to see how well the ship can compensate for it. So in case they do have an engine go out, they want to see how well the booster can readjust.
Us new lessons about Starship hardware, specifically the Raptor engines. And as we touched on earlier, the root cause was traced to a hardware failure in one of Starship's 3 center Raptor engines.
Yeah, just since that flight, we've done more than 100 long-duration Raptor tests at our facility in McGregor. Huge shout-out to that team.
Yeah, the last failure was supposed to be with one of the Raptor engines.
The engines that are on Starship's upper stage on the pad right behind us.
Had a catastrophic event with one of them, and it kind of took out the other 2.
Essentially, some additional torquing. A new nitrogen purge system for the engines themselves, and made some improvements to the propellant drain system.
After our first ever Super Heavy refurb campaign, we static fired with all 33 Raptor engines. This was a chance to see all of the hardware operating together, and for this flight, our teams had an opportunity to make adjustments or hardware replacements for this first ever reflight of the Super Heavy booster.
Then it was ship's turn. We took it through several static fires. First, we did this short duration single engine burn to simulate an in-space reignition of Raptor using those header tanks, those smaller tanks up in the nose cone. We also completed a longer duration 60-second burn with all 6 engines. It's where you're really putting the entire propulsion system that's going to be used for the ship's ascent into space through the paces, making sure everything's working together before we go stack it on the pad.
And in the end, these changes represent the core of our test program. And reflying the booster for the first time is a major milestone, especially so early in the flight test program. Now, Falcon did it in just over 30 flights.
And Starship's doing it today.
All right, Freak.
Just its 9th flight. It's not wild just because of how much faster that is, but just how much bigger Starship is. Falcon 9 can lift about 23 metric tons into orbit. Starship is designed to lift 200.
That is so exciting. And on top of that, we're also reflying engine 314 for its 3rd flight, which you might recall is the engine with a pie on the nozzle. And there you can see
engine 314 they've flown 3 times already, or this will be the 3rd time.
Definitely, but we do remain focused on getting to the point where no refurbishment is needed between any of the flights.
Yeah, that means we want to launch it, bring it back, look at it, reload propellants, go again. That is really what's key. That is what full and rapid reusability will look like.
We're coming to you today from Star Factory, our new 1 million square foot manufacturing facility in Starbase, Texas. The Super Heavy booster is the first stage of the Starship launch vehicle stack. It's the largest boost stage ever developed for any rocket ever. Having the largest rocket ever is a very cool engineering feat, but the thing that really
because I could do that
is the ability to rapidly reuse that rocket to launch many other missions. Reflying Booster 14 is an important first milestone in that we have proven that we can recover a vehicle, turn it around, and fly it a second time.
And this is also the first time I've streamed since I got my new power supply in. So hopefully the
things have to happen on it in order to take back off again. So we catch the vehicle, put it back onto the launch mount, put a new ship back on top, with
My
its
GPU
payload,
will hang in there.
refuel, and take back off. And that same booster will
Well,
come back
crap.
to launch mount, and we do the same thing all over again. Falcon is, reusing at a pretty high rate, and we get to go look at them and say, what did you learn? What is good? What is bad? And as we continue to build the Starship process.
Zero touch refurbishment really looks like a commercial airliner. The advantage we have on booster relative to when we developed Falcon 9, for instance, is this was really designed from the outset for rapid reusability. We're using all of the flight test learnings from our version 1 and version 2 vehicles in our orbital flight test campaign to inform the design of our version 3 vehicle. The next generation vehicle will be the first time that we've really attempted to make rapidly reusable thermal protection on a rocket. In the next iteration, we'll be able to add in new innovative materials and regenerative cooling that will enable rapid zero-touch refurbishment. Rapid reusability, the ability
Wow,
to
9 people in
turn the
here.
vehicle around
Let's
and
friggin'
fly
go.
immediately is really the key goal of the Starship program.
Yeah, Joe, it did. That's what it was. Apparently, my GPU wasn't getting enough power.
Starship is learning from Falcon with
The
reusability, and now
GPU
we're
I took
seeing
out of, or the
Starship
PSU I took out of here was 1,000 water, but it's like 6 or 7 years old.
Getting ready to launch in just about 17
And
minutes
it,
from now.
That's right.
using some of my monitoring software, it was monitoring enough power, but it might not have been enough watts or amperage or something like that being pushed out. So, got a brand new one, which wasn't cheap.
Issues on the range.
Another 1,000 of water.
Watch sea states, air, and land around the launch site here, and also over in the Indian Ocean, where we're going to be doing our reentry. Not tracking any blockers to launch at the moment. Weather is gorgeous. Has not been.
And I'll be happy if this one lasts.
We've been moving
another
pre-flight checkouts pretty smoothly so far this morning.
6 years.
Shipping the booster ready for prop load, making sure guidance, navigation, and control are.
Hey,
aligned
JCat,
and
welcome
ready
in.
to go. You can see with the frost coming off, we're getting pretty full. We started loading all of the propellants on board both ships about 45 minutes or so before launch. They kind of stagger where we start with ship and then move into booster. We're going to continue loading these propellants on board until just about 3 minutes before liftoff. We'll close out on the ship first.
Up in the little window, I got Tim Dodd, but he's doing the same thing I am. He's pretty much just listening to SpaceX. So.
Weather issues, but we're looking really good right now for a launch at the top of our window right at 6:30 p.m. Central.
Seeing the propellant loading is making this getting more and more exciting. Today is going to be a wild ride for Super Heavy. We're putting the booster through several tests to expand the envelope on its capabilities and get flight data to make its return and catch more reliable. Now, another unique change in today's flight will be the addition of the first ever directional flip of the booster.
That's right. If you followed previous flights and you kind of wondered to yourself, why does the direction of the booster flip seem random? Surprise, it's because it was. We've got a couple of views from previous flights where you'll see the booster kind of go in different directions, and it was really small differences in the thrust of those ship engines. As they started up, they would nudge the booster in an initial direction, and so the booster would essentially sense that and then lean into it, and it'll react, the engines will gimbal, and then it'll continue to flip. That was the easiest option technically, but you do take some performance hits since you're essentially setting aside propellant to accommodate every single direction for a flip.
Exactly, but if we know which direction we're flipping, then we know how much propellant we will need and can instead use more of the propellant to burn longer during ascent, adding more velocity to ship and increasing how much payload it can ultimately deliver to space.
Yeah, so today I've got my trusty Super Heavy here. We're going to intentionally try to flip straight up. So again, as you're separating from the ship, we want to get to here as you're doing that boost back burn. The fastest way is to just flip straight up and go into it. That's roughly what we did on Flight 5. It's the most direct way to get into that orientation for the boost back burn. What you don't want to do is when you flip all the way down like that, we did that on Flight 7. It takes you in a big loop, uses the most amount of prop, not efficient. We're at the point where we want to start kind of tuning it in and getting some extra performance out of the booster.
Yeah, exactly. That's called optimization. To accomplish this, we made some changes to the hot stage adapter, welding reinforced panels over the vents in the direction that we want the booster to go. So when the ship engines ignite, the thrust will push against the blocked vents, which means that the nudge will be in the direction that we planned for. And then when we go to the next generation of ship and booster, we plan to control the flip direction by fine-tuning the engine startup sequence on the ship.
Yeah, and that's not the only flight experiment that we have planned for the booster today. We're not attempting a catch, so we're going to try and gather additional data that's going to improve performance on future boosters. We're also going to try and see how resilient we are to things like losing an engine during the landing burn. By sending the booster out to sea, we're able to do these higher risk tests without risking the launch pad. As you might have heard earlier, we're going to be doing what's called a higher angle of attack. Basically, instead of coming straight down, we're going to tilt up a little bit. That gets you more drag on the booster. You're able to use just aerodynamic forces to slow you down. The slower you're going at the start of that landing burn, the less propellant you need, because really you're just focused on slowing down as much as humanly possible when you fire that up. So by already going a little bit slower, we'll get some benefits to our performance and our reliability on those burns.
Yeah, exactly. And there's definite uncertainty in how well the booster's grid fins and structure will be able to control its flight when we get into higher angles. So don't be surprised if it isn't a smooth descent for the booster down to its splashdown point today. The most important objective of this portion of the test will be getting actual flight data to help anchor our models. Now, we're hoping to fly the next generation of super heavy boosters at even higher angles of attack, so this test today will give us a better idea of what is feasible. Now, on top of all of this, we're going to see how resilient Super Heavy is to engine failures at the most critical times.
Yeah, we're going to intentionally disable one of those 3 center engines and instead use an engine from the middle ring that's kind of right behind it. Those center engines are what we nominally use at the very last part of a landing burn as you're just kind of fine-tuning the booster's path into those waiting chopstick arms. This is going to act as a real-world simulation of a pretty scary situation where engines are not starting at probably the worst possible time, but we're going to do this without risking the pad. And then, at the very end of the landing burn, we're going to cut one more engine off and go down to only those 2 center engines. The burn is going to end while Super Heavy is still several hundred feet above the Gulf, so we expect it to make a pretty hard splashdown. So, in all, pretty eventful day for the booster.
And as many of you may know, water landings are actually uncommon for SpaceX. While other launch providers expend all of their boosters after flight, we land and reuse most of ours. All of these tests are going to help us improve future generations of Super Heavy until we reach its fundamental design, a fully and rapidly reusable and reliable rocket. All right, let's check back in with Chris in Hawthorne. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, Jesse, my colleagues here in Hawthorne definitely agree with you. We can't wait to see the Super Heavy perform its second flight and see all of the work from our thousands of engineers and technicians in action today. Now, while this reuse milestone is incredibly important for Starship's development, Super Heavy boosters are not the only vehicles that we reuse here at SpaceX. We're big on reuse, and our Dragon fleet is another example of that reuse. And we actually control those Dragon missions from right here in Hawthorne in the mission control room that we talked about a little bit earlier. For Dragon and our human spaceflight program, this month also marks a big milestone for SpaceX, our 5-year anniversary of human spaceflight. Now, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley got us started back on Demo 2, which was notable for being the first time since the retirement of the shuttle program in 2011 that people launched to orbit from U.S. soil. Now, in those 5 years, we have launched 17 human spaceflight missions, 11 for NASA, and 6 commercial missions, including Polaris Dawn, with our first commercial spacewalk in history, and Prom 2 earlier this year, which became the first human spaceflight mission ever to explore Earth's polar regions. We've flown a total of 66 crew in those 5 years, and we are expecting that number to grow significantly in the coming years. Now, most recently on our Prom 2 mission, the crew offered unique glimpses into the orbital spaceflight experience. And this was honestly just so cool to see. Thank you to our Starlink teams for making everything with the Prom 2 crew shared possible. This honestly made me feel like I was right there with them in Dragon. They were living, they were working, they were
Mama wanted to come by and say hi.
Their experiments while also having fun. Basically, just being people and inviting us along for the ride. And that was really meaningful. Being invited up there really showed how these are just the early days on the road to making life multiplanetary. And the vehicle that's going to make all of that happen is Starship. And Dan and Jesse, I don't know about you, but that is definitely a future I have wanted since I was a little kid, and I cannot wait to see us make it a reality.
Yeah, right there with you, Chris. It's the fact that we're getting close to that being reality, that the vehicle that's going to go sitting on the pad right there, like that's endlessly exciting. all of that's going to include sending humans, all of the infrastructure for a permanent presence on Mars, and we're looking ahead to sending the very first starships to Mars as early as next year.
Yeah, this will help prove that we can actually get to Mars with focus on learning as much as possible while demonstrating what will be needed for Mars transit and landing. But before we can make life multiplanetary, we have to build the starships that will make it.
And that's happening right here, Starbase, Texas, the gateway to Mars. This is where we're soon going to be launching up to 25 Starship launches per year from here at Starbase. And the place is changing every single day. We've grown quite a bit just in the last couple of years. There's a couple hundred employees, their families living amongst actual rockets. We're in the process of expanding production and integration. We've got a target of 1,000 starships a year we're going to try to hit. And recently, we did become a city of our own. We're the first city in Cameron County in 30 years. And that's just going to help us scale more quickly, try to build out the best community possible.
That's one thing they just had done about a month ago. Starbase is now their own city.
Starbase, pretty easily one of the most inspiring, exciting, unique places to live and work on the planet. As usual, shameless plug, we're always hiring. Come help us build visit SpaceX.com/careers. See all of our openings.
This is my first time in Starbase, and Dan, the Star Factory is a manufacturing engineer's dream. To be able to build a factory like this at such a large scale with such a large scale vehicle is so wild to me. And though I'm just visiting, Chris is hanging out right where I call home base. So let's check back in with Chris in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, everything here in Hawthorne is looking good. The crowd is gathered, really excited to watch the hard work of all of their colleagues come to fruition here for Starship on its 9th flight test. Not tracking any issues. We are excited to watch Starship do its thing today, make it halfway around the world, and test a lot of those critical in-space maneuvers and operations that will be vital for the program's continued operations. So Dan and Jesse, we can't wait for liftoff. Let's have a good flight today.
Thanks, Chris. Now, if you're just now joining us, where have you been? But we're glad that you're joining us now. We are at T-minus just under 6 minutes until liftoff of the 9th Starship test flight. So far, the range is looking good. All the airspace and trajectory area that we are going to be launching through is looking good for our test flight today. Weather has been great. It was a little rainy and windy this morning, but it cleared up. It looks beautiful here in Starbase, and propellant loading continues on both stages.
All right, yeah, it is continuing. We're a little over 90% full on our booster. We are pretty much full in the main tanks on ship, filling up those header tanks. We're going to continue loading prop for about 2 more minutes. Once we're done with that, you've got just under 11 million pounds of liquid propellant spread across those 2 stages. After we get through all of that prop load, our stage 0 will get ready. The ground systems will go through pushbacks, clearing all of those fluid feed lines back to the propellant farm, getting ready for launch. We did just see they did a flap wiggle check, so the final flap check on the ship. We're doing final alignments of the guidance, navigation, and control system, our thrust vector control, essentially our steering, checkouts of the flight safety system. So everything progressing right now. If we do need to hold, that can come at T-minus 40 seconds. That's a point built into the countdown where we can pause to wait for any final checkouts, pressurizations, anything that we need to complete. We can hold there. We will only hold there if we're tracking an issue. We're not currently tracking anything that will hold us at T-minus 40 seconds. But if you've seen a Starship launch before, they can happen. We can push through them and then launch that day still.
Exactly, but when we do pass through T-minus 40 seconds, a number of events will occur in rapid succession. The ground spin and ignition systems come up to flight pressure, ship goes to internal power, and then after that, the quick disconnect or QD arm lockout is removed in preparation for retraction just shortly after T-minus 0. And once we pass T-minus 40 seconds, we do still have the ability to recycle the count under certain conditions back to T-minus 40 seconds, and then hold there to assess what happened and see if we can proceed again back down to T0.
Yeah, there are a couple of things kind of gates in that timeline that if we pass through that and we hit a hold, we'd have to scrub for the day. One pretty visual one will be if the water starts flowing for that deflector system that's underneath the launch mount. That happens right at around T-minus 10 seconds. For flowing water, we can't turn it off after it starts, and if we hit a hold, we're scrubbed for the day. We need to refill those water tanks. We would also at that point need to refill all of the propellant tanks. It's 11 million pounds of propellant. It's a whole lot. We typically do that in about 24 hours, so we can always turn around to try again tomorrow. But we are coming up 3 minutes away from liftoff. We should be hearing that we're closed out of prop load on the ship at this point. Booster coming up shortly.
Wow, the weather just looks amazing there with Starship on the launch pad. Just about 2 minutes 45 seconds from T0 with a lot of objectives for today. The booster, the Super Heavy booster flying today, will be flying for its second time. Last flight was on Flight 7 and just turned around in 2 flights, which is pretty incredible. I'm super excited to see that booster fly again.
All right, we did just hear we are going to hold at T-minus 40 seconds. So we'll pass along some more information once we hear that reason. But again, it's not the end of the day. We can hold at T-minus 40 seconds for quite a few minutes. We eventually have to start looking at our temperature of all of our propellant on board. That's usually what drives us to, if we've held too long, we have to stand down for the day. So we are expecting a hold at T-minus 40 seconds. Sounds like we're going to be doing some additional checkouts on the booster Raptor while we're at that T-minus 40 second mark. So we will expect to see the clock pause at T-minus 40. And then again, we've got a couple of minutes. They can work through the issues. If we're able to clear them, we can still launch today. If it's something that we can't, we can always stand down, turn around, recycle, fly again tomorrow.
Again, that's really important. This is what terminal count is exactly for, is to be checking the vehicle, monitoring the vehicle systems as it makes its way down to T0. And again, this gives us the ability to catch anything and be able to hold, as Dan has been saying, and recycle if we need to, or pause so that we can work through those issues and see if it's something that we need to stand down for. And as Dan mentioned, we will be holding at T-minus 40 seconds, so in about 20 seconds from now.
Yeah, so we'll hold there, and they'll work through these final checkouts on, sounds like just one of those Raptors.
Mama, will you sit still?
On the first stage on Super Heavy, which, as you said, we're flying it for the first time. 29 of those 33 engines have already been used in a launch, one of which has already launched
Twice. And
twice.
we'll go for
It
its
is getting ready for its third
time.
time. And you just heard our flight director for the day, Joe Sliker. He just shared that we are going to hold at this T-minus 40 second mark. Keep an eye on one of those Raptor engines on booster.
Come on.
If you're just now jumping in, we are holding still at T-minus 40 seconds. Watching one engine, waiting for temperatures to kind of get to a zone that we want them to on one of the engines on the booster, on the Super Heavy booster, getting ready for its second ever flight. We'll just continue to hold. Again, we can hang out here for several minutes. We held for a while on the first attempt last time and then cleared it, and then we triggered a different issue on the ground side.
Again, this is exactly what it's for. This gives us the best chances at success.
And the clock is rolling.
Here we go.
All right.
All right.
T-minus
30 seconds.
Let's listen in. Watch that first flight proven Super Heavy. Get ready to take off from Starbase.
Hey, Moon Bear. Welcome in. 10 seconds away from watching this rocket go off. Oh, they got a hold. As they reset it to 40.
Did have a hold. And looks like the
All right,
clock jumped
Kitty
back
Cat,
to
you're going to have to go.
T-minus
Oh,
4
you're
seconds.
clawing my shoulder.
All right, so yep, we jumped down. I did not see the deflector go off. So hopefully we were right at around that T-minus 10 second mark.
And if we were before that T-minus 10 second mark, we do have the ability to recycle, as we mentioned earlier, back to T-minus 40 seconds.
It looked like this time it was a ground side issue. We're taking a look at this real quick. So again, we're back at T-minus 40. We're gonna hold for a little bit. We are still not scrubbed for the day. Give them a couple of minutes to work through this. Again, we can hang out at T-minus 40 for several minutes. Eventually we start looking at your bulk temperatures and all of your propellant on board the vehicle. We're not actively replenishing the propellant on board Super Heavy and Starship, and so you don't have essentially forever to hang out before things start to warm up, and you do want to make sure your temperature is in a really stable range for a healthy startup on Raptor engines. So we're going to work through this issue. Continue to hold here for a couple of minutes. What's launch without a little extra added excitement?
I mean, and they're being extra cautious since they blew up the last 2 Starships.
So cumulatively,
And the fact that
held
this
for a
booster's
little
flown already once
minutes
before.
between the two
So-
holds. And this is a ground side issue on our tower. The techs are looking through the data right now to see if it's something that we can either
Okay,
work through,
this problem is not with the ship, it's
or
with
if it would cause us
ground
to have to stand down. So we're
tower or
continuing to
whatever.
hang out with them, holding at T-minus 40.
If you're just joining us, we did initially hold at T-minus 40 seconds. We continued the count, but recycled before we got to T-minus 10 seconds. So we're back at a hold at T-minus 40 seconds. Waiting for more information. The team is checking out to see if we can.
off to the right. You can see the second launch tower that they're still working on. I think the tower itself is complete. They're just mainly working on the launch mount. And it has a different type of flame trench.
We're continuing to hold here at T-minus 40 seconds. We've been holding for just about 5 minutes now. As the teams evaluate if we can continue to T0 for Flight 9.
All right, so it sounds like we're coming to a resolution. So we are getting to a resolution. We're going to reset everything. So we're going to see the clock. It is now rolling.
All right. Well, guess they fixed it.
We saw an issue with that quick disconnect to the ship. There is a chance that automation will kick us out again if we encounter the same issue. But for now, the clock is rolling. We'll see if we pass around that T-minus 10 second mark.
SpaceX does some wonderful drone shots. There we go. Underwater deluge. All engines firing. All right, and liftoff. With beautiful mock diamonds.
Booster rapid fuel pressure nominal.
T plus
Booster
40
ship,
seconds.
avionic
It's
power,
one
telemetry
hell of a
nominal.
sight from here. We see it arcing right over top of us. We see 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on Super Heavy as it starts to ascend skyward. Coming up on maximum aerodynamic pressure, then only about a minute and a half until we get into hot staging.
Wow, Dan, that was incredible. We could feel the building shaking here, feel the vehicle's power. And we're just about a minute away from shutting down those engines.
You see that black
on the
has down the
booster.
side
Again,
there?
this
Has
booster
no
is
heat
going
tiles
for
on it.
its second
It does
time
have that
today.
black ablative coating on it,
All right,
ablative
so
material,
hot staging,
but it doesn't have any heat shields.
a little under a minute. We're going to see all but the 3 center engines turn off on the booster. So our version of MECO, most engines cut off. And then just a few seconds later, hoping to see 6 engines ignite on ship to push it away. All right, hot staging, about 30 seconds. Definitely keep an eye on which way the booster flips. First ever directional flip we're going for today should flip straight up. See those engines?
Booster engine cut off.
There we go.
Ship ignition. Stage separation.
Incredible flip by Super Heavy Booster, and you can see those 6 engines, those 3 engines on the ship ignited.
6 healthy Raptors running on ship on its way to space. Peek that engine view. Booster doing the boost back. Chris, how's it looking over there in Hawthorne, man?
It is looking
Chamber pressure's nominal.
It is looking absolutely incredible here in Hawthorne. As we said, 6 healthy engines on ship. We've got 13 out of 13 engines on the booster. Now down to those 3, which is what we expect in the final moments of the boost back burn. Now, as a reminder, we are not recovering the Super Heavy booster today. We are instead going to do some...
Shutdown.
There we had a good shutdown of the boost back burn. Next up will be the jettison of that hot stage
Ship
ring.
avionic power and telemetry nominal.
Great call out there that everything looking nominal aboard the Super Heavy vehicle, which is returning to Earth, and we're going to be doing some experiments with it, including a higher angle of attack re-entry, as well as some engine tests as it gets closer to the Gulf. We are, again, because of these tests not recovering it, we are sending it to the Gulf on purpose to do those tests. But again, you see the booster on the left-hand side of your screen. You see ship with 6 healthy engines continuing its ascent to its planned suborbital trajectory. Everything going very well so far for Starship's 9th flight. Now 4 minutes, 15 seconds in. Great views from inside of the aft engine area of ship there, looking at those 3 sea level and 3 Raptor engines on the right-hand side of your screen.
Yep, seeing a little bit of fire in there.
Doing its LOX dump, that liquid oxygen dump. So because we don't need some of that liquid oxygen propellant in its tanks, we vent that propellant out to lessen the booster's mass as it comes in for its landing. Just absolutely gorgeous views watching these two vehicles do their respective things in the skies over Texas here today. And Dan, we're approaching the 5-minute mark into the flight. Super Heavy is descending rapidly. What can we expect here in the next few minutes as it does its atmospheric tests?
Yeah, I'm seeing a little bit of fire there in the engine
Yeah,
compartment.
now as we had talked about, Super Heavy might not have a very smooth ride down. We're going to be putting it through this higher angle of attack. We're kind of pitching it up a tiny bit, increasing drag. We've done this in wind tunnels. We've done this in computer modeling. It shows that sometimes the control isn't great, but only one way to really prove it out, and that's to get real world data. So here comes Super Heavy. It should be igniting for its landing.
To me, it looks like they got a fuel leak.
Just about 40 seconds from now.
I could be wrong. It could be
We're
something
gonna
else
relight
venting.
13 engines, then bring that down to 3 engines. As we talked about earlier, we will be intentionally shutting down. We will be shutting down one of those 3 center engines intentionally to push the limits of the Super Heavy booster.
Raptor, chamber pressure's nominal.
And continuing to see 6 healthy engines on the ship, 3 sea level and 3 vacuum engines still ignited as the Super Heavy booster is making its way back down to Earth.
We can see those grid fins doing some heavy work.
Booster landing start up.
Ignited for our landing burn. May have ended with that landing burn. Does look like we lost telemetry from the booster once we started into that landing burn. Did you see confirmation that the booster did demise? So the booster's flight ending before it was able to get through landing burn, but again, we are not bringing that back. We were expecting it to make a hard splashdown in the Gulf. We were getting live data back the entire time through that high angle of attack flight, so that was something that was really vital for us to get during this reuse. First reflight of booster in the books. All right, ship. There's about 2 minutes left.
In about 2 minutes, we expect all 6 Raptor engines to shut down. That will be SECO, basically second engine or second stage engine shut off. And these are some incredible views, Dan, from the aft end of the ship, watching as the engines stay ignited with the Earth in the background.
As always, the Starship avionics team, the techs. I think we just heard the booster. But all right, we got about a minute left into this burn. All eyes definitely on.
Hopefully,
ship
we'll get some footage from the
as we
buoy
go
cam.
through the final stages into its ascent. We're expecting it to start to cut those engines off about 45 seconds.
Terminal guidance.
All right, just about 30
Engine
seconds
on the
to
far
go.
right over there glowing a little bit red.
We're in terminal guidance.
At least the engine bell.
Final stages of this ascent burn. Did see shutdown of the Raptor engines. We do stagger these, so we do the Raptors first. Those 3 have shut down successfully. Sea level is still running.
Ship engine cut off.
Ship engine cut off, the 3 most beautiful words in the English language.
And great call out that we had nominal insertion. An incredible flight test so far today.
All right, this is further than they got on the last
We
2.
reflew a Super Heavy booster for the very first time in 9 test flights. Ship is in its orbital trajectory. Again, it's going to remain suborbital.
We have a crack in the
for
side of the ship.
mission today. But it ignited all 6 of its engines and made it all the way through SECO just now.
What a moment.
Incredible.
All right,
And we
I
got-
mean, that's still lots to come for the rest of this flight. Per usual, I need to collect myself. Hey, Chris, how's it going over there in Hawthorne, man? How's everybody doing?
I think the elation and the excitement and the happiness at what we just saw achieved carried through across all of our sites. What an incredible view to see Starship back orbiting the Earth just under 11 minutes into our mission. Absolutely exciting to see all of this, and super pumped especially to see all of the team's hard work in action here today. As guaranteed, it has been an exciting evening so far for Starship's 9th test flight. We lifted off a little bit after 6:30 p.m. after a couple of holds that were triggered at the T-minus 40-second mark, but we were able to clear those, one on the Raptor, one on the tower, and we were able to lift off successfully from Starbase. 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on the Super Heavy, all 6 engines lit on ship, bringing it to its planned suborbital trajectory around Earth. But as Dan said, we've got a lot still coming up in our flight sequence. So coming up at about T plus 18 minutes, 26 seconds, we'll have the first deployment of simulated Starlink satellites planned from Starship. That will be followed at about T plus 37 minutes and 49 seconds by the relight of a single Raptor sea level engine in space. This is going to help us gather data on our ability to do a deorbit burn for future Starship missions that will go orbital. And then, of course, one of the biggest tests yet to come is the new heat shield modifications to Starship. And that'll start with re-entry into Earth's atmosphere at about the T plus 45-minute mark, which should take about 16, 18 minutes to complete. Now, today's re-entry is going to test that heat shield like we said, specifically how Starship will hold up to 100 missing heat shield tiles on its thermal protection system. Now, we purposely took those 100 tiles off over very critical areas of the vehicle to be able to safely test on a flight like this suborbital trajectory into the Indian Ocean what might happen on an operational flight in those areas if we were to lose the primary heat shield tile over Starship. So very critical test coming up. And then after that, we'll have the final descent where we will again be pushing Starship to its limits. We definitely pushed the booster to its limits today to gather data, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing on that ship, seeing how the ship handles various flight conditions that we will need it to fly in as we look to one day soon bring ships back to Starbase for catch and reuse. Now, while there are payload simulators on Starship for deployment today, as we will see in a few minutes, the primary data and the primary payload for today is the data. And today, just like with Starship's previous test flights, that data is coming to us courtesy of our Starlink network. In fact, it is from Starlink that you are seeing these wonderful views of ship in space right now. So, and I can't wait to see Starlink really provide those epic views and that data transmission during reentry, which is very, very critical to getting that data during reentry. So, Dan and Jesse, it's been an exciting day so far. There's more to come as we get ready for Starship's first ever payload deploy. What can we expect next year in the next few minutes?
Thanks, Chris. Just going to reiterate thank you to the Starlink team for these incredible views today. In a few minutes, Starship will deploy 8 Starlink simulators, similar in size to our next generation Starlink satellites. The Starlink simulators will be on the same suborbital trajectory as Starship, meaning they will passively re-enter the atmosphere just like Starship. With tests like these, we can see how Starship's payload deploy systems work in flight while ensuring that the simulator satellites pose no safety risk to people on Earth or for other satellites in orbit. Now, this also ensures that any parts of these simulator Starlink satellites that do survive re-entry splash down harmlessly in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
And then before we get there, though, we're going to have to open up that payload deploy door. So we've only ever done that one time before. Pretty sure it was Flight 3. Someone on the internet, please check me. But that was the only time we ever opened it. And we've had Starlink simulators on the last 2 flights.
We got
but we
12
just
watching
never
over
got
on
to this
YouTube.
point
Welcome
where
in,
we were able
folks.
to open up the payload door and start deploying these. It's gonna
Watching
be pretty
SpaceX's,
cool. We've got them stacked
IFT-9.
inside of the Starship payload bay, and we'll have potentially a couple of views. You saw one camera pop up. Yep, there we go. Look inside of the payload bay of Starship. You can see them
Look at all the
stacked
debris.
down in the middle of your view. There's kind of 4 on either side, so they're sandwiched on top of each other, a stack of 4 right behind each other. And then we're gonna pop the door open. It's on the right side of your screen, so we'll see that open up and then start firing those Starlink simulators out into space.
Cool. Yeah, these are just dummy satellites. They're roughly the same size and weight or mass.
And then once that payload
As the
door is
regular ones.
open, about a couple minutes later is when we will start.
We'll get to watch
dispensing
for the
those
first time the
Starlink
Pez
simulators.
dispenser actually dispensed.
Stacked. So should be able to see them kind of firing out from right there. So really cool. And eventually these are going to carry dozens of the next generation of Starlink satellite into space, and those are going to enable some truly insane things in terms of speeds from space and what we're able to do. Starlink's been really great for Starship, obviously. Getting live video back is really cool, but just the amount of high-speed telemetry, everything we're able to get back is insane. And for a development program, that's kind of everything. We're in excess of 100, 130 or 160. My numbers are fuzzy right now, just like my brain is.
All these images are courtesy of SpaceX's feed
per second of downlink, and a lot of that gets eaten up by video. We've got
and Starlink.
dozens of cameras across Starship. We added several more for this flight. You saw a couple of those as we have essentially 360 degrees. Oop. Open the pod bay door now.
We are expecting the payload door to open any moment now, so we're watching out for that.
It should be there on the right side of the screen,
Inside
the right side of the
Starship as it's suborbital.
mass simulators.
Well, we heard the door open was in progress. It was unable to actuate all the way open, so they are going to close it back up. Hal told me no. Said, I'm sorry, Dan. Can't do that. Looks like we won't get the door open today. But that's okay. This is
why we
obviously a test we want to be able to do before we're deploying full-on Starlinks. But the real focus
Well, that sucks.
for this.
Of course, they've only messed around with the payload door once.
Is getting to that reentry. That is the most critical phase.
And they had trouble closing it then.
Still have to prove out. All right. Well, so it does look like we're not going to be able to deploy Starlinks today, but we should have pretty frequent views from Starship. They might cut in and out every once in a while, but should be pretty regular. We are in darkness right now, so might be a lot of black, but the cool part is when we get to reentry, it's going to be daytime.
Yes, and we did that on purpose so that we can get some live daytime views as ship is returning back to Earth.
All right, so we are going to take a break. Enjoy these views as we get them.
Ugh.
Enjoy the tunes. We'll be back in a couple of minutes when we get ready to relight one of those Raptor engines on orbit. See you soon.
All right, well, we'll hang in with this for a little while. Get out there, bright. Again, 14 people over on YouTube. Welcome in, folks. Please give the stream a like if you like what you're watching. 11 people over here on Twitch. Nice. Hey, Bama. And Junkie, welcome in. Well, they weren't able to get the payload doors open, so I guess they're gonna scratch that test. And we'll wait and see what happens with re-entry here. Like I said, they've got all kinds of missing heat tiles and replacement heat tiles on purpose. And part of it is to see where they can and can't afford to lose tiles. See which areas of the ship are more sensitive to it than others. .189 kilometers at a speed of 26,316. No, Bama, I won't be going to Guyman. Mainly for my health reasons. I got the money. Just, I don't know how well I'm going to do after a plane ride. And I still can't get up and walk very far. Right now, I'm having a hard time just getting back and forth to the kitchen and to the bathroom. So I was hoping that I'd be able to, but I still don't get to go see my pulmonologist until July. You know, hoorah for the VA. But I also have a buddy who's going through prostate cancer problems, and it's even taken forever to get in to see his specialist. And he has a regular doctor. So apparently all the specialists are backed up right now. I'm just glad I'm doing better than I was in January and February. And my poor camper is a mess. I haven't done squat in the last several weeks. I'll get a few good days, and I'll get a burst of energy, and I'll get a little bit of stuff done, and I'm down again for another 3 or 4 days. That's part of my problems right now with the VA, and they know I'm upset with them. This sinus infection started last August, and I kept telling both my regular doctor and the ENT that the longer they went without treating it, that it would move into my lungs, and sure enough, it did. And they still didn't take me serious until they found out I was in the hospital. Go figure. But good news overall, I did get my unemployability with the VA, so I'll be paid at 100% starting on the 1st, which helps out a bunch. Oh yeah, I'll be able to pay bills now without having to worry, and still have enough money left over to actually put aside for stuff, instead of just, making ends meet. And after paying lawyers, there was still enough out of my back check where I can pay for my land here. We're in the process of doing that. My landlord, my buddy Steve, he's going to have it appraised and also surveyed, so we know exactly where my lines are at. And we'll sit down and work something out after that. Yeah, that kind of upset me too, but I'll take what I can get. With the VA cutbacks, I guess I'm lucky to get that. Only took 32 years. Well, if I can get my lungs back to working right again, I'll start coming out to events again. I'm surprised the redneck hadn't called me this afternoon. He wants to talk pew-pews. Well, how long a break are they going to take? Cursor back down here. Let's bring Tim Dodd in over here. Is he? Nice. I guess that's why he's about a minute or so behind everybody then.
Scott Manley, by the way, in Discord's susceptibility, is pointing out that Scott Manley said, I'm honestly kind of concerned over just seeing control center with some attitude drift. Wondering whether there's an attitude control issue. It is kind of just bobbing around there.
Yeah, I don't know why they're showing Hawthorne. Hawthorne's, they might be tracking it, but,
Well, that's a two-dimensional representation of 3D motion. They're not going to have that little render in the bottom right corner. That's not going to show, it's never going to be other than two-dimensional. So if this is oscillating, let's say it's going to this.
Way to go, Tim. Sounds like something I'd do.
off angle, there we go. We're actually seeing views of it now. That does look awfully similar to Flight 3, though. I'm not gonna lie. That's feeling pretty similar to Flight 3, where it was kind of spinning out of control. Oh man. Hopefully that's not. I don't know. I don't know what to think about this right now. I don't know what to think about this. It's so hard to tell what's going on when it's nighttime too. We got a long ways to go before daylight.
It does kind of look like it's tumbling, but it's kind of hard to tell.
That orientation, the bottom right, is not ideal. See, it's so hard to tell. Is that parallax behind us of the? Like, what is? It's still at 170 kilometers. It has to literally just be Earth passing. It can't, by the way, people are saying I've lost quite a bit of altitude. There's nothing you can do right now to change the altitude, basically, besides just relighting it. It is.
He went to bed early last night, Bama, and it looked like he was up at a decent hour. He was in Discord earlier.
Lost our attitude control with Starship. We are still on a path.
I think.
to entry.
I'll look at it again later.
No matter what we are going to enter. However, this lowers the chances for it to be a controlled re-entry. So if you think back to Flight 3, when we had something similar happen, just the end symptom of the loss of attitude control, we were in a lull by the time we hit re-entry. So we are going to re-enter. We should hopefully still have views. Starlink satellites are pretty robust to still maintaining contact. We've got 4 of those terminals on the vehicle, and they're pretty robust to maintaining contact even when we are in a spin, essentially. So we should hopefully continue to keep wide views. It's going to still be dark until we get a little bit closer to entry, as we are a little bit, we're coming up on Africa, I believe. We do spend just to the south of that continent. And by the time we start heading out over the Indian Ocean, we start heading into the sunrise. So, not looking great with a lot of our on-orbit objectives for today, where we were hoping to do test deploy, reload an engine, and then really importantly get into that controlled entry to really put the heat shield through the ringer. Nonetheless, Starship marching forward towards that re-entry over the Indian Ocean, so we'll continue to hang with it and give you any updates as things continue to change.
Man, that's disappointing because with the V1 ships, man, they were bringing them down like clockwork.
Well, that is.
It's when they started with the V2s they started having trouble again.
One step forward. I'd say this is one step forward, one step back.
Yeah, I saw a little of it, Bama.
That's yeah. So
I got woken up in the middle of the night last night because I guess JD was summoning me.
in history.
Manette called and woke me up.
Secondary system for attitude
But
control.
by then he was too drunk to even
If something's in space,
converse.
and doesn't have
So I went back to bed.
stay in the same orientation. If you want to spin something, let's say you want to spin it this way, light have a thruster react here, push it that way, light another one down here, help spin it, and then stop there and just keep spinning. Just keep spinning, keep spinning. I'm going to stop that spin, get that light the opposite way, exactly opposite. The thruster here, the thruster here, that'll straighten it back up and it'll stop the spin on this. So normally, like a lot of vehicles will use cold gas thrusters, which is literally just compressed nitrogen, liquid nitrogen, and just use compressed nitrogen at very high pressure, and you literally just open the valve and let it rip, and that reaction just pushes against it. Very simple. There's no chemical reaction, just stored high pressure propellant. It's very simple. There's other, like, if you're trying to dock with stuff, Dragon capsule or Starliner or Apollo or whatever, a lot of spacecraft that need fine, real maneuvering for deep space missions and stuff. They use hydraulic components. So mixture, a bi-propellant mixture of typically, you know, it's and oh my gosh, so total legacy hydrazine. So and oh gosh, my brain is absolutely shut. I'm sorry. Anyway, hyperdogs. You use hyperdogs. You use bi-propellant hyperdog reaction. What it does is it means you basically those two.
Yeah, Bama, that's just nuts.
Instantaneous combustion between the two, and dinitrogen tetroxide and hydrogen. There we go. We finally get it. And that's a very common component. But you guys also have to store that in separate tanks and have all these separate pressure systems. You still have to have an inert gas to push those out. If you need to know more about this, I have my video.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I have a video all about this stuff, specifically how do you start a rocket engine and how do you power a rocket engine. Both talk about some of these difficulties. Now, what Starship decided to do, this is that video clip that you might have heard me do. It's kind of a viral clip, so to speak, where I ask Elon about the warm gas. We call it warm gas. It's hot gas reaction. You might infer like you literally take some of bi-propellant reaction, like gaseous oxygen gases method. You combine it, you still have a chemical reaction. Warm gas should be, in this case, you literally are using the gaseous method that would normally be vented out anyway, because it's changing from, as it's warming up, changing from a liquid to a gas. It expands, you normally have to vent that anyway. So instead of just venting it aimlessly, they decided, hey, what if we just vent it and have it be the gas reaction system? And believe it or not, and I've said this multiple times, when I initially said that to Elon, I said, but that's just for the booster, right? So he said, I actually thought it was a bad idea. And I'm not saying that we're feeling it, like nothing at all. Literally, I just was not convinced that's a good idea. I think there are better ways that you can do a bi-propellant system still, where you do a hot gas thruster, where you wouldn't be reliant on all this. And I kind of, pushed back and I was like, well, it just seems weird. And basically, he's like, well, if you think about it, we have so much volume that's unusual. No other vehicle gets into orbit with all this extra volume of ullage gas, so the gas that builds up during the pressure of tanks. And it doesn't actually take much of that to be your reaction control system. And so it's free. It's literally, in terms of like being able to have a reaction system, it's free. So if you can get it to work, it's brilliant. And they did get it to work. Like 4, 5, and 6.
Hey, Drew.
All had, smooth operation of the warm gas thruster system. Today, it's a new vehicle.
Still got 10 people over on YouTube, 11 over here on Twitch. Thank you all very much. If you are over on YouTube, please give the stream a like.
So people, Rob Speed said in our Discord saying it's dropping.
If you really like what you see, consider giving me a sub.
That's, again, nothing they can do right now besides lighting an engine really have a dramatic effect.
I don't do just space. I play some video games when I am playing regular. I haven't done much since Christmas because of my health, but I've been trying to cover these rocket launches because I'm a big nerd.
Increasing altitude, decreasing. Earlier asking why is it slowing down. It could literally be a brick right now and it would do the exact same thing. You could have held a brick out the window and let go of it, and its velocity, its altitude would be doing the exact same thing. Obviously, its attitude right now is really wonka. It's all wonked and not looking good. But that is not having a noticeable or weird effect per se.
All right, just still got music going on. We'll keep Tim's
Spinning, but that's not changing.
Tim's audio up, and we'll go to SpaceX's stream.
Larger impulse, a larger amount of energy to
That's just some weird aura there. It looks almost like plasma.
trajectory on a 200 plus ton vehicle going 26,000 kilometers an hour, still almost 10 times faster than a bullet with that much mass. It takes a lot of energy to move it. So hopefully that explains that. Let's try to get into some of your questions, see if we get caught up at all. Let's get into a good news one. This is going to be not fun, and let's get one from Try Celsius. Nice to finally be a member on your channel. I'm an SLS electrical flight processing engineer. Had to guess how would re-enter software models for Earth work for Mars entry when the atmosphere is thinner. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate you saying hi, and I appreciate your super chat. So how does would re-entry software models for Earth work for Mars entry? So literally, this actually right now, this region here, 100 kilometers down to 80 kilometers down here. So just by the numbers, pretty well lines up with Mars. So you can still get valuable flight data on what it would be like, what it is like when you're flying through Mars' atmosphere. Because the big thing is, when you're at this velocity, even a minute amount of atmosphere, even 1% of the atmosphere has a huge amount of man, this really, I don't know what's exactly going on. It's getting very disorienting. I feel like we're totally spinning out of control. But we might see this thing.
I don't know if that's plasma or not, but that's a cool effect.
It seems like really like. Wow. Make sure we're not missing the SpaceX audio. I don't know if they're probably not commenting on this. There's a fire. There's obviously a light source. There's a fire. Like, why else would there be a light source? It's nighttime. So that's why we're seeing there has to be a fire somewhere. I don't know where, but
Could be, but they kept switching around cameras and I didn't see a fire.
the good thing is
That makes sense.
The good news is that it's staying online for a long time. So they're gathering a lot of data right now. The longer they're connected to the vehicle, the more information. Remember, they said today's payload is data. Well,
Yeah, strobe warning in case any of y'all have
data about what's going on, hopefully, and hopefully they'll have
epileptic issues.
again, and the factory able to build out the solution in no time.
Oh, thanks, Bama.
Definitely. This looks like plasma reentry interacting with what might be a fire already. It's entering backwards, so we're getting the leeward side experiencing. This is crazy. Footage like this has never been seen before. Whatever is going on. Plasma interacting with. Wow.
To me, it looks more like plasma than it does fire, but it could be reflections of a fire burning too. I don't know. But you're not seeing any fire coming out of the engine bay there.
So again, for a reminder, we would consider this off nominal. This is not what this is supposed to look like. And again, it's bittersweet because the first bit of, this vehicle finally made it through SECO, but it looks to me like there's been a leak this whole time probably. That might have been it. Oh, no, she's still here. But I would guess there's been a leak this whole time. It's a fire. We have gaseous oxygen. Anybody ask how can you have a fire in space? There's oxygen out there. This vehicle has liquid oxygen, has liquid methane. If those two things are vented and there's heat to start a fire, and if it's continually flowing, same thing with the rocket engine. It's just a low pressure rocket engine. Now we're seeing breakup. Yeah, I think that Raptor vacuum engine on the right will watch. There's some blowing on it here in SECO. And I think it's just spewing. This is crazy.
Let's go back here.
It keeps
Critical
coming back.
phase that we need to try and
Unbelievable.
gather as much data, as much information as possible is a fully reusable heat shield has never been flown before in the history of space flight, and that's something that Starship still has to crack. And so we had a whole range of experiments on this one at this point, and we just started to lose some of our cameras, so it's very possible that we'll start to lose contact with Starship a lot sooner than we would have if it was a nominal reentry. So we are expecting it to break up essentially on its reentry over the Indian Ocean. So not able to do a lot of our on-orbit objectives today, but just the fact that we, got it into space was just a really big moment for a lot of the team.
Yeah, and another thing to note is that Super Heavy did fly for its second flight today. It first flew on Flight 7, and it made it all the way to our shutdown of all the engines and stage separation, getting ship into its suborbital trajectory today. It did ignite its 13 engines, but it did demise at that point. We did plan to fly it back down to Earth at a higher angle of attack, and we do expect it to stress the vehicle a lot more than what we've seen previously. So it's not unexpected that we did lose the booster before we got to the actual landing.
Yeah. So we're gonna continue to hang out and see if we get any updates on ship. It does look like we might be getting some video back soon. There we go. So this is a view essentially on
Yeah,
the
now that
top
does look
part
like
of
a fire
Starship.
there.
You're looking up at the payload bay and towards the nose cone. So views are gonna be a little bit scarce potentially, as again we are in essentially a tumble. We had lost that attitude control. So Starlink, when it's able to connect, able to feed this down. We are at the phase where we would expect entry to start within the next minute or so. So we are entering uncontrolled, but again, we're entering into an airspace and a sea space that is cleared and monitored in advance of launch and before we get to this phase.
And with the views that we are able to see, you are seeing a lot of that plasma build up. During re-entry, we do expect the vehicle to see about 1400 degrees
Oh,
Celsius.
there goes the
and
flap.
you can see the flap feeling that temperature there, a little bit melting away. But as we expected with the spinning of the vehicle, we are no longer controlling the attitude of the vehicle. So this is now, at this point in the test flight, it is expected to see it begin to demise a little bit on its way back down to Earth.
Yeah, and so we'll stick with it for as long as we're kind of getting any reach back from the ship as it starts to make this re-entry. But yeah, so it's re-entering actively right
Yep.
now. And again, we did do what's called passivation, so you essentially vent all of your excess propellant overboard before you hit the atmosphere. That's a safety measure we can take on the
Oh,
ship
okay.
while
They
you
were
still
venting
have
all the
contact with it. So
fuel.
that was
Okay.
done. It's now coming down in the predetermined hazard area that was cleared ahead of flight. Not controlled, so we're not going to get all of that reentry data that we're still really looking forward to. This is kind of a new generation of ship that has different flaps, improved heat shield, a whole lot of things.
Yeah,
that
I
we're
would
really
too,
trying
Bama.
to really put through the ringer, as there's a whole lot we still need to learn before we get to kind of the next step that we're hoping for, which is going to be that ship going orbital and eventually coming back here for a catch. So getting through one of these fully is going to be really important. It's not going to be today, but we are just going to stick with the ship, see what else we can learn as it makes its way through the atmosphere and brings an end to the 9th flight test. So we'll stick with it.
The fact that they can even get that video down while it's tumbling, scorching through the atmosphere, I mean, the upper atmosphere, that is unbelievable. Telemetry officially gone. I mean, I think. And reminder.
If you're just now
this is
joining
not
us, we
falling-
did
yes,
have an on-time liftoff from Starbase Texas at 6:30 p.m. Central Time of the Flight 9 vehicle. We did have some incredibly stressing objectives today. The Super Heavy booster flew for its second flight. It first flew on Flight 9 and made its way to take ship all the way up to stage separation, doing its first second flight ever, which is pretty incredible. We did lose the booster on the way back down, as we did fly it back down at a higher angle of attack. So as expected, we did.
They weren't planning on catching either one of them anyway.
Yeah, we were able to get all the way to that landing burn though, so we made it through that higher angle of attack. So a lot of great data that's going to help us improve those future booster flights.
Yeah, we did do the directional flip, and it worked.
Yep.
It was actually
Flipped
a
in the
great
right
view
direction.
that we saw. And then ship continued 6 healthy Raptor engines in the beginning of its flight, making it all the way to Seco and coasting for quite a while. We made it to the expected time that we would open up the payload door. Unfortunately, the door did not open as we expected it to, so we did not deploy the 8 Starlink satellites.
Yeah, we ran into a couple of issues once ship got there, but I can tell you it was a pretty crazy moment for a lot of the people that were standing here for ship to make it there. It's been a couple of flights, but it was really exciting to see. Ran into some issues on orbit. We weren't able to deploy the Starlinks. We eventually lost attitude control, dealing with some propellant links inside of the ship. And we did lose attitude control. And just to confirm, we did lose contact with the ship officially a couple of minutes ago. So that brings an end to the 9th flight test. So still a lot of work to do, but really big moment. Chris, how's everybody doing over there in Hawthorne? What's the vibes, man?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's a test program, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to learn, and that was definitely the vibe and the atmosphere here at Hawthorne. Would have been great to see ship get all the way through its objectives today, but with all of that data that came down through the Starlink system, we're definitely going to learn, and we're definitely going to fix that and push forward. Also, great to see the responsible engineers here in Mission Control talking with the flight control teams in Starbase. We talked about how it's great having that expert knowledge on console to be able to go to at a moment's notice, and that really helped us make the right decisions in orbit today when we decided to passivate the vehicle. So we will be here looking forward to Flight 10 and some success on future flights.
All right, well, obviously congratulations to everybody that poured so much time, effort into getting this ship, this rocket off the pad. The last 2 months have been an absolute gauntlet for a lot of people, and we're continuing to learn more about this ship, about this rocket. We are trying to do something that is impossibly hard, and it's not always you're not going to reach it in a straight line. We said there's going to be bumps, there's going to be turns, but seeing that ship in space today was a hell of a moment for us. So congratulations to every single person who put time, effort, sweat, anything into that rocket.
Yeah, this is exactly the SpaceX way. We're going to learn, iterate, and iterate over and over again until we figure it out. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you for the fine people of Cameron County, including the residents of the newest city of Starbase, as well as the Coast Guard, Federal Aviation Administration, Government of Mexico, as well as the Australian Space Agency.
All right, now, this is not the end. We're going to have a whole bunch of cool liftoff stuff, so be sure to follow us on X at SpaceX for more, and we will see you back here for Flight 10. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, let's kind of wrap it up. We'll go over here and see what Tim Dodd's saying real quick. He's a little bit behind because he is
of the newest city of Starbase, as well as the Coast Guard, Federal
broadcasting in
Aviation
4K.
Government of Mexico, as well as
There's a little more of a delay.
All right, now, this is not the end. We're going to have a whole bunch of cool liftoff stuff, so be sure to follow us on X at SpaceX for more, and we will see you back here for Flight 10.
All right, so again, everyone, maybe a little effing chat to pay respects. Oh, definitely a bit of a bummer, but we have a gorgeous sunset here. This is live right after the launch here. It's a beautiful sunset. I'm excited to get our team fed tonight. That's going to be the thing that I'm looking forward to. I don't think we did a lot of SpaceX this month. Maybe, I don't know if we're going to talk tonight. You know, there's that talk of the chance of there still being a presentation after launch. I guess we'll probably at this point see how Elon's feeling. Maybe a little bit gun shy if there's a lot of work to do. So. But give a shout out to everyone. Shout out to, again, SpaceX for at least getting first booster reuse, first time for Ship 2 to make it through to, all the way through Seco. I do have to point out this is actually following about the same trajectory as the first 3 flights of Ship 1, of the original first 3 Starship launches, where almost exactly, where we didn't get to Seco on flight 1 or 2, and by 3rd they got to Seco, but they lost control. I mean, it's verbatim, and before you knew it, by flight 4 they were getting some serious success. Flight 5 and 6 were awesome. So hopefully it's a similar path here. Again, gotta
all right, for those of y'all here over on Twitch,
and hopefully that's
there's one of the
gonna
Starship,
work out for
SpaceX
that.
Starship
Hopefully they'll learn
t-shirts.
from that. And one more time before I lose you guys,
Exclamation point, enter to enter, 90 seconds. See if you can't win a t-shirt.
Lock socks are 25% off this from the web store, along with our Metalox shirts. And we do have our 1/100 scale metal.
And if you're over on YouTube, you'll have to jump over to the Twitch side,
Brand new Mercury
because right now they don't have
the most detailed
gifting
photos
integration
on
for
a rocket,
YouTube
so
yet.
You'll be able to find online. So if you want to support the work we do, head on over to everydayastronaut.com/shop. Get some lock socks, and if you want to get dig full 25% off.
Tim, yeah, SpaceX really doesn't. They have a YouTube channel that they put stuff up later on, but since they own X, they pretty much do everything over there.
By the way, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it. Okay, so we have our heat shield button up, which is awesome. It's, if you look really closely, it's a bunch of little tiny heat shields. So we do have this, but we also have something. We do have this now in a long sleeve shirt by popular demand. Everyone wanted us to do a long sleeve button up as well. So these are custom sewn and manufactured and
Turn Tim down a little bit.
dress wear. So if you are someone that needs to wear dress wear for work or just
Phoenix, Nix, Manette, Bama, all entered. Anybody else? Exclamation point and enter.
be used today. But everydayastronaut.com/shop if you want to get some for yourself.
Who got it? Nix got it. Congratulations, Nix.
They kind of get a little bit,
You know how to do the thing.
and one, I am so relieved I can just go to bed tonight and sleep and have a normal day tomorrow. Hopefully I get my luggage and still lost.
All right. Well, maybe we'll find out here in the next couple of days exactly what happened.
Great.
See if Elon or SpaceX actually posts. They've been a little tight-lipped about their stuff lately. Of course, I can't blame them. Friggin' China's copying their stuff left and right. You're welcome, Nix. And anyway, like I said, it wasn't a total failure, but it wasn't a total success today either. Like I said, they weren't planning on catching either one of them anyway. So they learned a lot, and if I'm not mistaken, they're already ready to test the next booster for the next launch. I believe they had a road closure for tomorrow, maybe to move it out to the test site. So we'll see what happens with that here. Maybe they can rebound in about the next 4 weeks and try it again. Of course, I gotta go through the whole FAA thing again since they went outside their norms. So anyway, again, thanks everybody for coming and hanging out on both YouTube and Twitch. And I personally am going to go lay down. My head is still killing me. I'm going to go lay down for a bit. Take these headphones off. Turn off this dang key light that's blinding me. And hope you all have a wonderful evening. Let's look over here on Twitch. Oh crap! I gotta. We'll see if we can't raid out over here on Twitch. See if I can find somebody who's. There we go. We'll go over to Aerospace News. We'll go right now. One of my World of Warships buddies. He's also an engineer. Believe it, if I'm not mistaken, an aerospace engineer. Oh, God, it's been so long since I've done this. Great. Alrighty, again, thanks for hanging out. I'm going to go over and see Aerospace News, and y'all go by and say hi. Thank you for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.